One of my many experiences with night terrors, sleep paralysis left me with memory loss, and now I have to live with the fact that my body kinda operated without me for a week. I was about 7 years old and woke in the middle of the night to find this smoke creature crawling up the bottom of my bed. It was terrifying, as you can imagine, and I booked it for the landing. Which is weird for me because looking back, I would have expected it to be sleep paralysis. I still get these occurrences often, but I could move perfectly well on this occasion. I reached the top of the stairs outside my bedroom, and another one was slowly making its way up, step by step out of the darkness of the floor below. I froze and looked around for somewhere else to run to, but I was pinned because the first one was making its way through my bedroom doorway toward me. Both of these smoke demon things were advancing on little 7-year-old me, so I did the only thing I could think of, screamed the house down. Mom comes running just as I start to go blind with smoke creeping into my vision. My blood pressure was wonking out. It was the same smoke I get when I stand up fast. Mom ends up soothing me, taking me back to bed, and at some point she leaves and lets me go back to sleep. The next morning I apologize for waking her up last night. She has no idea what I mean and we're both confused. I tell her I woke you up on the stairs. I was having a nightmare. She informs me that that happened over a week ago, not last night. I have no memory of that week occurring, not a single shred, but apparently I had gone to school every day, played with my friends, eaten my dinner, done my homework, and had my baths, all without knowing that I had done it. Apparently, I'd been kinda quiet during that week, and my mom assumed I was having trouble at school, which was not an uncommon experience for me. But I still, to this day, don't remember anything after that night, and it gives me the creeps to imagine that my body has done things, gone through the motions of everyday life, without me having any knowledge of doing it.
Years ago, I remember sneaking out of my friend's house at night to really do nothing but walk around the neighborhood and hide from car headlights. We were young and bored. There was a homeless camp that was down in some woods off the railroad tracks not too far from his house. We had seen the trail and knew what was back there. One of the homeless guys that lived there was actually an old friend of my buddy's dad, and he had stopped over a few times, and my friend's dad let him shower there and everything. He could have worked if he wanted, but he legit told us he just liked living off the grid. Just wanted to give you some backstory on the reason why we thought it would be cool and safe to go check it out at night. We were a bit nervous at first, thinking, what if we get there and his dad's friend isn't there? So we were sneaking up on it. It was a longer walk than we thought. We got kinda close and saw there was a fire going, lighting up the woods a bit. We started sneaking closer, but the trail seemed to continue straight, while the camp set off the trail to the left. We got, I don't know, maybe 100 feet from the camp, about 30 meters, and we looked down the trail and saw a faint silhouette of what we thought was a person. The silhouette looked like it was coming from deeper in the woods towards the camp. We froze and ducked slightly to the side of the trail. I told my friend that I didn't like it and that we should just sneak the hell out. He said he had the same feeling. As I said, the fire at the camp was just enough to light the area well enough to see. We end up slowly creeping slightly off the trail back to the railroad tracks. We get probably 30 to 40 or so feet, 9 to 12 meters. And I told him I would rather just hit the trail and just slowly walk back because the bushes and trees and everything were hard to navigate, and I would rather be able to see something coming so we could book it out. We played football and were both pretty fast. We slide out of the brush and see the silhouette has gotten closer. However, moving further from the fire, the light was dimmer, but we could still make out someone or something was standing there moving closer. My first thought was that maybe they saw us duck into the bushes and were coming to check, but it just felt off. My friend and I looked at each other and both mutually and silently decided to pick up the pace. Almost on cue, we both looked back, and the silhouette was now booking it towards us, absolutely silent. No noise, just fast movement. We hightail it as fast as we can. Thankfully, the trail was wide, so we weren't bumping into each other or anything. Neither of us looked back until we hit the railroad tracks, then hit the railroad track bridge, and were on the other side. I looked back as I was slowing down past the bridge and didn't see anyone. We got back to his house pretty fast, and luckily that was the end of it. When I was 17, I was hanging out with two friends, and they wanted to go smoke weed in the woods. I didn't feel like it, so I drove them and waited in the car. After a while, I was getting bored and decided to go meet them, but there were 4 paths going off in different directions. So I just took the biggest one. After walking for a few minutes in the pitch-black forest, before flashlights on phones, I come across this dip in the trail, and on the other side is a bench lightly visible due to the moonlight. On the bench is sitting a man, and another one is standing in front of him, but I can only make out silhouettes. Being sure these are my friends, I yell out to them before walking over. If you ever walk the woods at night, it's just an uneasy feeling all around, so I was cautious to begin with. Well, it turns out, just after yelling out to my friends, both silhouettes turn around towards me. Not a word, not a sound. The guy sitting down starts sprinting full fucking speed towards me, in complete silence. I got the absolute fuck out of there, sprinting also the other way and tripping over shit because I couldn't see anything. I finally got out and locked myself in my car, but I was really worried for my friends. Maybe a minute later, I saw them both coming out of a completely different path. They also confirmed they had never seen me or anyone else. My heart still sinks just thinking about that dude sprinting in silence. What the fuck was that shit? I work the midnight shift at a gas station, and I have for quite a while at various stations in different areas with varying levels of criminal activity. I have regulars, of course. I'm a small-statured woman, as is my partner the other half of the week, and we've always been partners. So these regulars often worry about us and keep watch on creepy occurrences when they can. I had one man who worked in the metro an hour away who would stop in every morning for his cigarettes. He never smiled or seemed friendly, and as I often do, I tried to think of what I could do that might make him smile one day. It took many months, but I finally pulled it off by having his cigarettes ready on the counter and already scanned for him to pay for as he walked in. He smiled and then asked me, "Do you ever get scared on the night shift? You, small girl, are not safe." I said I sometimes did, but we could lock the doors and hide if we had to, and that the provincial police, think state troopers if you're American, had a station close by and came in often to get their highway vehicles washed. I had a good rapport with those police. He nodded and then told me a story about when he first moved to our country from Eastern Europe with his wife and child back in the late 80s and early 90s. He fell asleep at work one night at the gas station he worked midnights at. When he woke up, the phone had been ringing for hours, and his manager was shaking him violently, asking if he was all right. He was fine, he said. What was the problem? He was sorry he fell asleep. His manager screamed that it was fine he fell asleep, to look outside. All of their motor oil was missing, and the outside of the place was a mess. The thieves had come and swiped all the oil and left him be because he slept through the entire thing, and then moved down the road to the next station for an encore. At that station, the clerk was awake and fought back, so the thieves stabbed him to death and left him to bleed out. When he finished telling me this, he concluded with, "If you ever feel sleepy, just lock the door and do it. It might save your life." I don't work at that station anymore, but I think about that guy all the time and wonder how his grandkids are. I'm still looking for a logical explanation for this. This happened in 2003, so my ex and I checked in a coastal resort where the cottages were far apart, like 200 meters away. Around 11 to 11:30 p.m., while we were both drinking beer with the lights turned off and only the TV on, the doorknob suddenly rattled violently, like someone was forcibly trying to get it open. There was no double lock on the door, so my first reaction was to jump from the bed and block the door with my weight. The force of my landing must have been heard from the other side, but the twisting of the doorknob continued. By this time, I was already pressing my face to the floor, trying to look and estimate how many people were outside the door via the small gap between the floor and the bottom of the door. There was nothing, not one pair of feet or anything, but the doorknob just kept rattling. I should point out that the gap between the floor and the door was enough for me to see the outside, or at the very least, notice any change in shadow or light caused by movement. but there was nothing. The turning of the door knob then stopped, but I never heard any footsteps or any other noise. Waited a few minutes and opened the door. Everything was quiet. No footprints outside or on the sand surrounding the cottage. We just noped out of there immediately. My mother's story. I've no reason to doubt her, and she's never told another or been concerned with the supernatural. She does have a vaguely spiritual streak, but that's all. Mostly, she's pretty no-nonsense. When she retired, she got heavily into family history. At some point, she obtained the diary of my dad's mother, who'd passed perhaps 20 years previously, whom we all called Nan. Nan had been a very stiff and proper English type, called everyone dear, used adjectives like terribly and perfectly dreadful, and was always relentlessly formal and seemed to be slightly offended at all times. She was also an intensely private person and never wanted anyone to know her business. So one night, my dad was away, and my mother, home alone, sat down with the diary and started going through it. It starts raining, nothing unusual since they live on the coast. She gets up and closes a few windows, goes back to the diary. The rain turns into a storm. It gets windy. She goes to the other room and shuts the windows there, comes back to the diary. A few more minutes go by. She's been looking at the diary for maybe 15 minutes at this point. Suddenly, the intercom to her right bursts to life at full volume with just static coming from the speaker. They live in a 3-story house on the side of a hill that was originally built by an electrician, so there are a million lights and power points on every wall, and every room has an intercom. After recovering from the fright, she turns off the intercom. The one in the next room is still going full blast. She gets up and shuts that off, and can hear the rest of the house downstairs still going. Every intercom. She heads down to the middle level where the master unit is and turns the intercom off. She's heading upstairs when she notices all the pictures on the walls. My mother is heavily into hanging things on the walls. Big, small, paintings, family photos. There's a lot of frames on the walls, are all askew. All at similar angles, not random. Meanwhile, the storm has increased. The floor she is on is lined the length of the house on one side with timber-framed windows. Even the tops of the windows are wet with rain, which rarely happens and takes a proper storm to do. As she stood there taking this all in, what she can only describe as an intense gust of wind rattles the windows from one end of the house to the other as if a speeding train went past on the balcony outside. Instead of fleeing into the night in search of a hotel room and real estate agent, as I would have done, she walks calmly upstairs, calmly shuts the diary, calmly puts it in a cupboard, shuts the cupboard, says, "Sorry, Nan," to the empty room, and goes to make a cup of tea. The storm dies down. She writes all the pictures. That's that.